For my personal project, I chose to learn Polish. My goal for this project was simply just to learn as much Polish as I could in this amount of time. I knew that I couldn't realistically become fluent in a few months, but I wanted to do what I could and continue after the actual project was done. This project is personal to me because I am Polish. My dad is somewhat fluent in Polish, and his parents are originally from Poland, and they still use Polish as their main language. Also, I've wanted to know another language for a long time, and this was a pretty good opportunity for me to start learning a new one, so that's why I chose this project. I didn't really have to do any research for this project, unlike most people. All I really had to do is find sources to teach me stuff, which wasn't hard to find at all. The first source I used was Duolingo. I had already used this before for Spanish class, so I felt this was a good place to start. I ended up going through the first checkpoint on Duolingo, which was 8 lessons, before I switched to other sources. In these lessons, I mostly learned some fairly basic vocabulary and things about the language. Some different vocabulary included types of food, types of animals, adjectives, and words like man and woman. I also learned many important phrases that were actually pretty helpful and useful. There were the topics of pronouns and genders, which I actually got a good understanding of from Duolingo. And then there were also topics of like cases and plurals, which Duolingo introduced, but I really did not get a good understanding of it all from here. After using Duolingo for a little while, I decided I wanted to find a better language learning app, and I ended up deciding to use Babbel. I did have to pay for a subscription for this, but I'd say it was definitely worth it. Over the course of my project with Babbel, I've completed 60 total lessons in the Newcomer, Beginner 1, and Specials modules. These lessons obviously covered a wide variety of topics, so I can just briefly describe some of them here. The Newcomer module described topics such as basic phrases like jak się masz and yes and no, conjugation of to be, the verb to have, the verb to know, personal pronouns, greetings, other phrases like how to say your name and where you're from, how to ask questions like directions and how to order stuff, how to tell the gender of a word, and some pronunciation. The parts of the Beginner 1 module that I have done included topics such as describing nationalities, more pronunciation, the verb to speak and descriptions of language, talking about family with possessive pronouns, asking about jobs, formal possessive pronouns, and the concept of cases. Overall, Babbel has been probably the most important component of my project. I've learned more there than from anywhere else, and I still have a lot to learn. There are also several other sources I used for this project, so I can just mention some of the minor ones now. I used this first Polish words book for help with a lot of vocabulary. I made a Quizlet off of it about body parts, and it was actually pretty helpful, and I can learn a lot from it, even though it's just like a children's book. I also had to use some other sources that were just to find very basic information like numbers and days of the week and seasons and stuff like that, because Babbel and Duolingo kind of skipped over this stuff, so I just had to find it in some alternate place, which actually wasn't until way too recently, but I was able to find them really easily on the internet. I also used just a random website to help me learn some conjugations of some common verbs, which it was mainly helpful to learn about imperfective versus perfective verbs, but other than that, it was just a pretty small thing. The last major resource I used is called Course of Polish. It's actually a YouTube channel and a website. I first found it when I watched the video on present tense conjugation of verbs there. I just searched that and then I just found the video on it, and it was a really good video. There were some other good videos too. One was about noun genders and how to guess them, and then there were 6 videos I watched about possessive pronouns, 2 each for the nominative, genitive, and dative cases, one being a lesson and one with practice problems. And I found these all to be really helpful lessons. On the website side of things, of Course of Polish, I started with doing some of the exercises that were linked in a video, and I later did some other exercises with my babcia when I was in Florida with her. These kind of ended up with me like having to guess a lot since you kind of need some prior knowledge, but it was still good practice. And then the last things I did on Course of Polish was look at the grammar section on the website, which I found extremely helpful. This part included tables with a summary of all the endings in all the different cases in singular and plural, and there were more detailed articles for each one. Additionally, this section had descriptions of exactly when to use each case, and I don't have these memorized right now, but they seem to be extremely helpful for knowing how to write Polish. And I think that Course of Polish has been very helpful for me to understand how the language works, and is pretty important to my project. At this point in my project, I'm not really as far along as I would have liked to have been at this point. I can't speak a lot of Polish, but I've been studying very regularly, and I hope that I can continue this project after this presentation. And the last thing I have is a video with me and my babcia speaking. She helped me write it and stuff, and it's scripted, but I was speaking in all of it, and it's just for my final product. Cześć, jak się masz? Jak masz na imię?
Dobrze, ja mam na imię Krystyna i jestem z Warszawy, ale mieszkam w Naples, Florida.
Ja mam na imię Andrzej i mieszkam w Mooresville, Północna Karolina.
Miło Cię poznać, Andrzej.
Jaki jest Twój zawód?
Jestem na emeryturze, ale byłam księgową.
Dobrze, ja jestem uczniem w 10. klasie.
Gdzie uczęszczasz do szkoły?
Chodzę do liceum w południowym Iredell.
Czy uprawiasz jakieś sporty?
Tak, ja biegam.
Jakie masz zainteresowania?
Ja lubię grać w video games. A ty?
Ja lubię podróżować i bardzo lubię czytać. I na Florydzie lubię chodzić na plażę.
Jakie jest Twoje ulubione miejsca do zwiedzania?
Moim ulubionym miejscem są Wyspy Karaibskie.
Jakie są Twoje ulubione książki?
Ja lubię czytać autobiografię.
Miło było rozmawiać z Tobą.
Nawzajem, dobranoc i do usłyszenia.